Morning. This is a yin sequence for fall, and we'll go through one of each of the archetypal poses with some options. So if you're able, begin on your belly. Also be on your back. Perhaps hands and forehead meet. So you rock the hips. And then pause and just breathe here. Sense the motion of your belly on the earth as you inhale and it balloons. You exhale and it softens. Sense your breath here. One more inhale. And as you exhale, bend those knees, maybe crisscross the ankles. So a little bit of movement before the yin today. At least for me, the lower back is a little bit tight. And set those feet down, slide those hands in toward the shoulders. Press yourself into a rounded tabletop here, cat and cow tilts. Just floss the spine a few times, arch and round, just to bring a little movement there. As we will begin today with a pose from the saddle archetype. And that can provide, or that provides some compression on the lower back. So we want to warm this area a little. So a few more. Last one, arch, round, and then make some circles just with the hips. And reverse. And then return to the belly and come into a little sphinx here. You might even choose this variation of the saddle archetype if there's any issues with the knees hinging and you're looking for something a little more gentle. So you could stay here, could have a bolster or pillows underneath the chest, could have just a folded blanket underneath the hips or underneath the forearms. Looking for more today, up swan will be our highlighted pose. So one option is to have that right leg come forward and allow the thigh and the shin to meet in this deep hinge. And then from here, you could just stay or clasp the back ankle. For some of us, we might like to, in up swan, take that shin and bring it out anywhere from 90 degrees to 45-degree angle. And stay lifted here. Again, if you want more, you could clasp the back ankle. So choose what works for you today. If you're in Sphinx, you're still getting that compression into the lower back, still lengthening through the front line. A little more effort required, a little bit of yang in the up swan, in my opinion. Notice where there's the most sensation. Saddle archetype. If there's knee hinge, you'll feel this perhaps in the quads or one of the quads, perhaps the back leg. Feel it in both. Compression through the lower back as we're arched. Feel stressing of the tissues. To allow greater shifts to occur. As long as there's no pain, find stillness where you are, stay steadfast. Notice the quality of your breath. It's long and strong, you know you're in the right place. One more inhale here. And exhale, if you have that back leg, release it. If you're on your belly, you could lower down all the way. If you're an up swan, roll into that right hip and bend the legs. And it doesn't really matter here. You might have them on 90 degrees, you might not, anywhere in between with both front and back leg. I'll show you from the front for a moment. So if you were in Sphinx, come and join us here and explore deer if possible. So deer is all about the hips. So explore the angle of the legs, and you could stay upright or take a bolster and come down onto it. And this may take some time. The target area is that right glute down the IT band. And if for some reason deer is just not for you and you would like something that tends to be more intense, you could take sleeping pigeon and come up, lift that right hip back off the earth, lengthen that left leg long, and you could come down onto a bolster or to the floor in place of deer. If deer is still hard on the knees, you can roll yourself over and take, in yin it's called shoelace. Take reclined shoelace and weave those hands around that left bottom thigh and flex the top foot to protect the knee. So lots of options. Those are all part of the shoelace archetype. Choose your variation. Pardon me. My apologies. I'm going to have a sip of water. You need to breathe into this pose. It said we store a lot of emotion in our hips. Notice if anything arises for you. When we're inhale here, as you breathe into the back of the heart, then exhale to begin to rise and pause at the top. Those moments of transition, just as important as the poses, perhaps a still point. Between a beginning or an end and a beginning of something new. From here, either rotated pigeon or rotated deer. So I don't rotate very far. However, rotate slightly toward the bent knee. And for me, I come out more on a diagonal. Could have the bolster in front of you and come down. You might be more rotated. Depends on your body. For me, it ends up being a diagonal out toward the right knee. So perhaps you explore that sensation. Really tight today, but I will try to model it. If in pigeon, could take that left arm up and thread it underneath the right one and perhaps come down onto a bolster or onto the shoulder. So for me, I can tell already that's too much. So back to deer. And kind of an angle here. If neither of these work, a rotation on your back with your legs toward the left. For anything like me, this gives great compression on the belly, on the liver side here. Perhaps each time you inhale, you can feel internal massage, gentle rotation, or intensive impingement. Has your experience changed since the beginning of the posture? The fluidity of experience noticed here? Reflecting our life off the mat, everything being temporary. Inhale. And exhale, perhaps to bring the head back to center if you had it to one side. And slowly, in your own time, come up. And perhaps extend the legs in front of you. That was a lot, very intense for that right side since we stayed on it. Do anything you need here. Perhaps just rock the feet side to side. Take just a slight little caterpillar, just come forward. We won't stay here yet. And roll up through the spine. To find the other side. So perhaps you come back to that Sphinx with or without props, elbows wide or hands wider. Explore it feels supportive. Or the up swan. Again, shin could be in line with the thigh. Or perhaps you allow that shin to come in, come anywhere from 90 to close to the inner thigh. So tight these days. And sit up tall. And perhaps you take the bind and clasp that right ankle. And kind of sit up here. You can even have a block or a blanket underneath that left hip if you find it's dipping too low. So you've kind of come up, perineum facing the floor. Notice if the side is different than the other. It's quite natural to have some one-sidedness. Sometimes the mind will quiet, other times it will begin to chatter all the more, seeking to avoid the experience if it's uncomfortable in some way. You can stay with this. The breath is always there to return to. Use it as a tool. Not an easy pose here. Few more breaths. Inhale. And exhale to release the bind if you had it. Pause wherever you are. Perhaps you come all the way down, especially if in the Sphinx, or roll onto that left hip. And just be still for a moment. Note the effects. And likely another shift in sensation. Perhaps an energy as it slowly, as it frees slowly. I can't even talk today, sorry. Flows freely, is what I meant to say. And from here, make your choice. Perhaps it's deer. Put that bolster in front of the body. If you would choose to lean forward. This is one of the options here. Or you take that sleeping pigeon. Or that left thigh or left ankle crosses over the right thigh. And give that bottom thigh a hug. Deflex the top foot. The first minute or so can be to find our way. Although Yin is about stillness, we need to ensure that it's the right variation for our body, given its history, given its bone structure. Target areas at left glute, leg, outer leg. And depending if you're down, there may be some compression on the belly. Breathe into it. there anywhere you can soften? As we lengthen these tissues and the fibers uncoil, lengthen temporarily, new hydration can enter them. See if you can be like water here, liquefy, melt. This is more our perception. It may not change the outside appearance of the pose, but it's about a feeling, a mindset, that can have powerful effects on the body. So play with your perception. Use your imagination. Inhale and exhale to rise, so that you can find that rotation if you choose, or more of a diagonal, at least for me today. So if in deer, rotate your body toward the left knee and perhaps bring it down. Some people might be able to, can't even model it, might even be able to bring themselves onto the bolster and leave a little space for the arm, kind of like in pigeon. So if in pigeon, seem to be able to model that more easily. Can thread that right arm underneath the left and come down. For me, I lose placement of the hips. So I'm going to come out in a diagonal. And choose to turn my head. So I land on my right cheek. Remember, you can bolster yourself as high as you wish. They could be stacked quite high. And if they are higher, you might be able to get more of that thoracic rotation. This one's just too low for me to really do a lot of that. It's very slight. There's tension, perhaps wiggle the jaw. There's always the option to swirl the tongue around the mouth. Your leg or the bolsters might provide compression here on the spleen stomach side. Breathe into it. And here, imagine that compression on the belly, wringing things out. so that when we eventually uncoil from this pose, fresh fluids flush to those areas. More inhale. Exhale, if the head's turned, return it to center. And slowly rise. Pause, maybe a little lean back. And then when ready, extend those legs out in front of you. We'll take caterpillar. So the legs can lengthen. We can pour our body forward over a bolster if we wish, as one option. Could also be seated on probably a lower bolster than that, or a blanket, just to tilt the hips forward. And then decide if you'd like to stay upright or round. Hyperextenders, little blanket underneath the knees. And if this is just too much, the right leg comes in. We just do one half. If engaged in one half, since I'm not with you, yes, if engaged in one half, I'll just cue halfway through when to switch. Just in case there's anyone doing the half version, the half butterfly. Soften the feet. That's why it's important to have that blanket underneath the knees if you're a hyperextender, because when we soften the feet, there's less protection for the knees. So as long as they're not hyperextended here, the feet can relax. Different than in our active practice. Breathe into the lower back as the hips ground. Already switch sides. This is a quick posture. If you're in the half butterfly, take that left foot in instead of the right one. It's only a 3-minute pose, about a minute and a half each side. Choosing single-sided variation. Inhale. Exhale, ha. One more wide inhale, broaden through the ribs. And exhale to roll yourself up. Notice the back line, the bladder meridian. And now kidney meridian, where we widen the legs perhaps into dragonfly. So one option, wide leg, seated. You could also do this on your back with the wall even, with the feet on the wall. So ground the hips and come forward. Or you might choose butterfly as well. Cobblers in regular strong practice, regular active practice. So choose your variation here. This again should get some lengthening through the back of the leg, but primarily through the inner thighs, where the bladder, or not the bladder, the kidney meridian runs. Bladder meridians along the back of the legs, back one. You might get a bit of sensation still in there. And feel free to use bolsters if you'd like to come forward. And again, as long as there's no hyperextending, you could soften the feet, or again, put little towels or blankets underneath those knees. The feet are more active. For me, anyway, it tends to bring it into the back of the legs more if you're looking for longer stretch through the back of the legs, since that caterpillar was quite short. Since the layers of fascia, the sheaths, now they begin to slide and glide along each other. Things continue to liquefy, hydrate, uncoil. Let the breath support the free flow of energy. Throughout your being. More breaths. Last one, inhale. And exhale to begin to roll up. Or bring those legs together if on your back. If seated, perhaps remove that holster and slowly walk one leg in and then the other. They might feel quite achy. Bend those knees, perhaps windshield washer the legs, only if movement calls to you. You might choose to stay in stillness. And then find your way into your back. You could just come onto your side to descend, or come onto the forearms, lift the chest, and let it sink and roll yourself down. Perhaps hug the knees in toward the chest, little hug. Won't stay here, but perhaps a rotation to reset the hips, could lengthen that left leg, take the right leg over just for a moment. Ah. And then opposite side. Mhm. You can find your way into Savasana. And since I have these long bolsters, and you might have something like this or a pillow, I'm going to choose to take one the whole length of my spine today. Open up the heart. If you just have one, it could be underneath the heart. The feet could be planted on the earth with the knees bent. So you might look like this, but the bolster might end. You might have the sacrum down and just the thoracic spine on, there we go, on the bolster. But if, like me, you have these multiple tools, you could lengthen yourself out. But feel free to play with your pillows, your props, your position. Maybe you return to the belly. Whatever gives you space. The mind's wandered, perhaps return it to the breath. With each inhale, sense the space you create. And with each exhale, again, the space you create by letting go. Allowing new energy to enter the body with every inhale. And what does not serve, to release. Feel the air on your skin. And yourself heavy on the floor or on the bolsters or pillows. As you begin to add movements, perhaps you roll the wrists and ankles. Change directions. And from wherever you are, your long body stretch or yawn. Before you roll to your favorite side. And find your way to seated. Roll the shoulders. Or make little circles with the nose. Perhaps they grow. Reverse the circles. And then drop the chin. Look up, if you will. Arms can reach. And bring your hands to your forehead. May our thoughts originate in the heart. Bring your hands to your throat and to your mouth. May our words be kind but empowered. And to the heart, where compassion lies. Thank you for practicing with me today. Sat Nam. Thank you for joining me. Pardon the frog in my throat that keeps coming back. And if you live in the Barrie, Ontario area, I'm about to begin Saturdays a Yin series at Giovanni Wellness, one of the studios that I work at, and it will be a trauma-informed Yin style practice. Until next time, have a great day. Bye for now.